Thou shalt not use false mystery or cheap surprise.
It wasn't that bad.
To reach the limit of human experience seems to require 3 major reversals.
Of course I can't marry you. Charlie, please understand. After the accident, I had to have skin grafts, plastic surgery. God forgive me. You poor boy. I'm your mother.
When the gap opens up in the story like that, you suddenly have a rush of insight. I get it.
Okay, thank you. Charlie, listen to me and listen to me good. The man in that coffin couldn't have been Harry because Harry's flight to be king never took off.
But that means Gina.
Thou shalt seek the end of the line, taking characters to the farthest depth of conflict imaginable within the story's own realm of probability.
The end of the line. Okay, Charlie, this is it. The end of the line.
Okay, I want the truth and I want it now! Stop, whoever you are! I'm not afraid to use this. Jimmy! You!
The key to endings is to give the audience what it wants, but not the way they expect.
Talk, you bastard. You live with a woman who I thought I loved. A woman who claims to be my mother, who I thought was dead. So where do you fit in?
I think you know that, son. I think you've known that all along.
All the tension leaves Charlie's body. Jimmy takes the gun and throws it away. They embrace.
Dad! Oh, Dad!
Gina runs to Charlie.
Mom!
Charlie.
They also embrace. Cut to long shot of car park. Charlie, Gina and Jimmy appear, arm in arm, walking into the distance. The camera tilts down to reveal the locket in the foreground.
And so in classical structural light changes, all questions raised in the audience's mind by the story are answered by the story. All emotions provoked by the story are satisfied by the story.
Great. Still got 10 minutes before the photocopiers closes.
Thou shalt rewrite. Talent without craft is like energy without an engine. It just burns. Craft maximizes talent. But if talent isn't there in the first place,
I think there's no harm in people being taught about the classical structure. I mean, I think it's absolutely fundamental to storytelling, a lot of the stuff he's teaching. Where I think it can be dangerous is if people take it too literally. And I've noticed from people who've emerged from the course, there's a kind of Est-like light in their eyes. And I think they act as, you know, there's a sort of born-again quality. And I think there's a tendency for them to take it much too literally.
For the cinema is a very highly structured medium. Narrative movies, particularly American-style narrative movies, are very highly structured pieces. And it's obvious that the screenwriters got to know what the rules of that structure are if they want to break them and bend them and play around with them a little bit.
try again.
All right, you bums, let's do it. I don't know.
Wait a second. I don't understand what your problem is.
Look, I just think I need a couple more lines, you know? I mean, this is the guy's death row speech. Make him more of a hero, for Christ's sake.
I hate this. I really hate... You know what the problem is? The plot stinks.
Oh,
That's the problem.
please.
Don't give me please. It's artificial.
No,
it's terrible.
it's
I
fine.
don't know
The
why.
plot is fine. It's your attitude, huh?
Oh, my attitude?
Yeah, and you got this block you got to get over.
Oh, Marvok? Marvok, did you see this? Look at this. Studio directive, and I quote, "Don't smear the successful man. Don't smear the businessman. Don't write about the common man. Don't write about the little people."
No.
I'm not gonna write about it.
What, they blacklisted the Munchkins now?
Oh, my God.
I feel it would have been a bad thing if, before we wrote our first script, we had studied form and analysed it and knew too much about what we were setting out to do and what the problems might have been. Because I think it tends to, if you worry too much about what act you're in and what plot point you're at and where the character arc is, and you tend to lose the sort of freshness and the excitement and the energy that comes from making mistakes and correcting them afterwards.
I think people, especially younger writers, can get over-anxious about structure, and it can limit and hinder their writing to begin with. I think structure is something a good producer, a good script editor can help them work on.
I think that courses like that are much more dangerous for producers to attend than they are for writers to attend. I think that already we're seeing a situation where when you have a meeting about a script with a script editor or a producer, the person throws back at you, well, what's the controlling idea of this picture? Or where's your spine?
It's definitely a craft. It's not an art form, at least at the level when you start the whole thing off. It's like plumbing or sort of being an electrician, that there are rules there, very specific things that have to be done in terms of, you know, the way you tell a story, the way you lay it out on the page, the way you present ideas to executives in meetings, the whole thing. But there isn't really anybody there, there isn't an apprenticeship that you can serve directly with people to show you how you learn what those rules are and how you do these things.
I operate on the basis of a very self-evident truth that writing cannot be taught. What I think is possible is if you have a writer, a potential writer with talent, you can help that writer not to waste time by pursuing blind possibilities. And basically, my attitude is that anything that liberates the human imagination, that liberates the creative spirit, is a good thing. Anything that inhibits the creative spirit is a bad thing.
I think one of the great things about American cinema is that they're not hindered by the British theatrical tradition. And American screenwriters are brought up to think in terms of writing for movies. They write in terms of images.
In a secret lab, somewhere in the Western Hemisphere, the perfect human specimen has been born. He has the strength of 10 men and the wisdom of 20. He also has a twin brother.
That's what Hollywood is so good at. If you come in with an idea, that one's tendency is to sort of embellish it and to get more sophisticated and to play tricks on the audience and to turn it round. But what they're very good at is saying, well, what's this really about? And particularly even if they're thinking of casting, is this a Bette Midler thing, is it an Arnold Schwarzenegger thing? They sort of keep simplifying it down to the underlying formula, and that if you stay true to that, you have something at the end which is very powerful.
My name is Julius, and I'm your twin brother.
Oh, obviously. The moment I sat down, I thought I was looking into a mirror.
The system there finds it almost impossible to take on board the idea that that script should be preserved through the stage. You know, any 2 cents worth of opinion from some executive who can probably just about write his name will certainly have equal status to the director. The directors are not free either. They can't even say who's going to be in it. And if they have a problem with if they communicate that they have a problem with understanding, say, a particular transition in a script, and they make the mistake of saying that to their producer, and the producer makes the mistake of saying that to the front office, there are another 3 writers on the job next day.
Well, I think it's always a sort of sword of Damocles hanging over the head of an American writer, that there is a far greater tendency to bring in someone else. I mean, there's a Hollywood joke about you're sent a wonderful script and the first thought is, who can we get to rewrite it?
They see it and they want it, and the very act of getting it destroys what they want. That's the usual pattern. I must have that, I must have that talent, I must have this, that. Buy it, as they think. And the very act, because they've passed over the money, they say, it's mine now, and you do this. In other words, they try and make you like them, even though they actually wanted you there in the first place for something else. Well, that's the usual tale.
Help!
Yes, terror. It's when a piece of your own imagination comes back at you with its own life, ready to point an accusation. Oh, I know that feeling.
I find a lack of passion in writing for the screen. And I don't know why that should be, that people seem to be able to write quite powerfully for TV. I mean, things like The Singing Detective. But somehow the cinema writing for me lacks passion. There seems to be a fear of dealing with emotion. And that's, again, something the Americans, I think, are much better at. They're much more prepared to confront emotion head on.
I think the thing about British films is that they are designed for a limited market. And I mean, Room with a View is a brilliant film. All those Merchant Ivory films are brilliant films. But if you do the acid test, what would a man sitting with his popcorn in Pacoima make of it? He wouldn't know what the hell was going on. He'd say, well, what is this? And therefore, I think the only time that British cinema works globally is when it has to set its sights lower.
There are many ways to be other than mid-Atlantic, which is the curse, is that you have to do and drive the engine that it has your fuel in it. That's all I can say.
I think one thing that is healthier about American writers is that they're much more prepared to do rewrites. I mean, they may go to a script conference and discard 90% of the notes they're given, but they will, sort of launch themselves into rewrites, and they know that's part of the process. Whereas here, I think, again, because of the way writers have been treated in television and in the theatre, which is rather reverentially, some writers look appalled if one suggests going beyond a second draft. And I think that's the biggest single problem with most of British cinema over the last 5 years, is that almost every film, I think, could have benefited from one more draft.
Ernst Lehman, the great screenwriter, once said, he said, the bitch about screenwriting, Bob, is that when you win, you lose. If you write badly, you get all the blame. If you write well, the director and the actors get all the credit. And so still you write screenplays, and you write it because you have to, because you're a writer, and that means that no matter how difficult writing is, everything else is harder.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do.